Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Photography Chat. We're at Season 2, Episode 46 with Tim Ryugo from Kodak. So let's get Tim on here with us. And hello, Tim.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Let's see.
You're
There we go.
Clear there.
I've got like writing on my face, so I'm just trying to get used to all this things going on. This is new technology for me.
It's a little different, eh?
Yeah.
It's been fun though. Like I've been really liking this format, and the guests have really been liking the format of just having this sort of like live chat, and then they can interact in the comments down below. And here we got Michael from Retro Photo York there.
Hey, Michael.
And then, Alan from, well, he used to be at the Leica store in Boston. Now he's doing his own thing. He's creating some cool art.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Alan very well.
Yeah, Pablo in here. And then Dan. Dan's going to be a guest here soon. Oh, and Chris. Yeah, so many great people. And right before I was getting ready to come online here, my lady knocked on my door with a FedEx package, and the timing couldn't have been better. You shocked me. This is a photography chat first. You mailed me something.
Oh, so you just got it?
I literally just got it, like,
oh my gosh,
2 minutes before jumping on here, and thank you so much. Like, the card is so cool. I like that. The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like your calligraphy is amazing. Like that's just that's beautiful. Like the handwriting is so nice. Thank you so much.
You very much. Yeah.
And then your
I'm old. I've had many years of experience just trying to get that cursive just right. They taught cursive in my school in the day.
I was on the tail end of that. I remember we had to learn cursive until like I think it was like grade 4, and then it stopped. Like it just
stop already.
And I love your card. It's kind of funny though. It reminds me of like my real estate lady gave me a very similar kind of card. It's cool though.
Yeah, they've been
the coolest cards at Kodak, because I remember Matt, when he was giving his cards away, he's got it printed on the negative.
Oh, right, Matt Stoffel, right. They had they started putting it on the color print film.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a pretty cool one. But thank you so much. I like the Kodak bag here, and some of my favorites in there. Like it's you can never go wrong with the Tri-X, and
right.
Portra 400 is like a rarity right now, I hear.
Yeah, we just got a truck in, so the pipeline should be filled in the next couple of weeks or so.
So has it just been the demand has just been so high for the stuff that it's been hard to keep up?
Yeah, worldwide demand has just been really incredible the last couple of years, actually since COVID. It's just been, I think a lot of folks have gotten out and started, doing personal work. Some of the wedding photographers that I know, when the weddings were postponed and canceled, they got into more personal work, taking images of their family or friends, and just stepping back and creating, product, for themselves. And so I think that the 35 millimeter, that's when 35 millimeter kind of really exploded. I think people like reached into their closets and found the grandpa and grandmas and their fathers and parents 35 millimeter, whether they're SLRs or point and shoots, and they just took them out and started running with them. So
yeah, because I'd heard a rumor that like Polaroid got themselves in a bit of a pickle because with COVID and everything, they anticipated that sales would slump a little bit, so they like throttled production back a little bit, and then the
Mm-hmm.
exact opposite ended happening where like people were stuck at home, they wanted to create
Mm.
stuff and they wanted to buy film, and it just created like this weird ripple where they didn't have enough stock, and then it kind of they've been playing catch up.
Yeah. Well, part of that was probably, some of the supply chain as things closed down. New York City, the first several months closed down. The shops were closed. San Francisco had a similar, issue where, the municipality said, hey, you can't have people in the stores. So, there was some suffering going on in some of the retail outlets where they had to pivot and create, a quick online store or the ability to purchase and then, offer curbside pickup. So, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody was like pivoting and trying to figure out, how to do commerce in a very difficult situation.
Yeah, San Francisco was an interesting experience because I was there the weekend it was shutting
Mm.
down
Uh-huh.
because they were putting on the Policon Bay Area that weekend, and when I left Canada, we didn't have any travel restrictions yet, and so it's like I didn't know about isolating or things like that. And when I came home, they're like, "You need to go home, and you're not allowed to leave for 2 weeks." And I'm like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
And it was just really wild to like watch the city shut down around us over that weekend.
Hmm.
Like I got there on a Wednesday, and like Wednesday night it was kind of weird, and I was staying with a friend, and he was like, "There's this thing, man. Like you could stay at my house, but like you stay in the basement. I'm upstairs. Like if we hang out, like
Hmm.
you gotta stay away from me." And I'm like, "Okay, like this is interesting." And then it got weirder as we went further into the week and into the weekend, and um,
It
yeah,
was
it was
probably before all the masks were even available, right? Right? I mean,
yeah, like masking wasn't even really a thing at that point either, and it was when the quarantine ship was in Oakland, and
oh, yeah, right.
yeah, and we took the ferry over to go do a photo walk in Oakland, and like as we were going by the docks there, we saw like the quarantine ship, and it was like kind of was like that's the ship, like that's where the sick people are. It was kind of wild. Like while we were walking through Oakland, Brian Brooks got a call from the place where we were supposed to meet up for tacos and beer after the photo walk, and they were like, yo, you got to get here in like the next half hour or you can't be here because like the governor's just like shut things down.
Mm.
So like if you guys get here like in 30 minutes, it's all good. But like if not, no tacos for you. So it was like, all right, guys, we got to go get tacos.
Yeah, definitely got to get fed. I mean, usually you can't starve in San Francisco. There's so much variety there.
Oh, there's so much great food there. Like
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite cities. Like I think San Francisco and Boston are like, two of my favorite places to go, but San
Hmm.
Francisco definitely has like the number one spot there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I
I've
certainly
oh, sorry, go
appreciate the
ahead.
invitation, to be on with you and to chat. But I know I have a broad experience. I think I had mentioned to you that I mean I've started as a yearbook photographer in high school in 1972. And that's where I fell in love with photography. And when just when I joined Kodak 42 years later to this point, now I'm managing the professional film business. So it's been an exciting um, run for me and a career of both putting together an avocation and a vocation together, and just really proud of the fact that I'm here today and representing a wonderful product.
Yeah, like Kodak is definitely one of my favorites. I've got a plethora of Kodak shirts here in my um like I I'm not a very good grown up because like I'm 40 in like a week and a half, and I mostly just wear t-shirts. And a lot of them are Kodak ones now because I did a factory tour with Matt in 2019, and then ended
Oh,
up just
nice.
buying a bunch of stuff while I was there. But yeah, going to like the yearbook stuff. So it's like, did you was that what got you into photography, or did you have an interest in photography before you started doing the yearbook stuff?
You know, actually, it was the yearbook. It was almost simultaneously where my parents went to Japan, and in those days it was like 360 yen to the dollar. I mean, and so like a Canon FTB camera that my parents brought home was like $150 for the body and like 3 lenses. It was just, you know, incredibly priced, you know, back then. And so, of course, I was not able to use that camera right off because it was brand new and it was my dad's. So when I joined the yearbook staff in my sophomore year in high school, they gave me a Yashica mat. And so my first camera was shooting medium format with the Yashica mat camera. And the interesting story in connection with that is that the staff said, "Hey, we want you to practice with this camera." So I went out to an air show at the local municipality, and that particular day, I can't forget. It was September 24th, 1972, that I went to this air show, and it just so happened that this jet failed to take off, and it ran into a Farrell's, killing like 22 people. And I was like across the street from this, well, maybe 2 blocks away from this Farrell's when I was waiting for my dad because I wanted to leave early to have my dad pick me up. And I was just waiting, and I saw this jet ready to take off, and it was one of these like little fighter jets with the hole in the nose, and it was taking off, but it was so low. I'm going, oh, it's not going to make it, and it didn't. It took out a fire hydrant, a car, and ran into a Farrell's, and it and then it blew. There was this big plume of smoke and fire, and I did not have the guts or the photojournalism in me to go over there and take pictures. I just kind of stayed where I was and just was going, I wonder what happened over there, but it can't be good.
Yeah, I mean that's a that's a wild first experience
That's
to
the first, yeah, isn't it? I mean, it was just like, oh my
that's something
gosh.
that sticks with you. I feel like Dan has a question for you. How was shooting medium format as your first? Surely it must have been confusing starting off.
Yeah, right? Looking down in that viewfinder in the Ishika mat, I was just like, it did take a while to get used to that orientation. No doubt about it. And I think it was because of that experience that I went home and I showed my dad. I said, "This is the camera that they're going to ask me, to use in yearbook." And I said, "Can I please use, the Canon FTB, please, please?" And he got, my dad's favorite expression was "Hell's bells." And so he would like go, "Hell's bells, how are you supposed to take a picture with this thing?" So I think that convinced him to let me, use my dad's his Canon FTB, and he had like a 100 to 200 zoom that was with it. Of course, it had the 50 millimeter, which was great. And then I ended up buying lenses for the camera myself. Ultimately, I ended up buying this is another silly story, but my dad ended up buying me a Canon F1. One of his favorite shops was Tokyo Electronics in San Francisco. He went to San Francisco, came home one day with a Canon F1, and I go, wow, thank you, Dad. And he goes, well, don't thank me because you're going to pay me back. And I go, what? You didn't even take me to buy the camera. You bought this camera for me and bring it home. And, you know, it was like, he goes, yes, it was $550. And I'm going like, you know, and he knew that I had made a lot of money and for my summer job and I had the money, but it was just like, wow, thanks, Dad. You know,
your dad savage.
Yeah, dad was was terrible. Yeah, you know, I was like looking for this gift, but no, wasn't going to happen.
So do you still have the F1 and the FTB, or?
No, the FTB ended up, you know, breaking down. The F1, I ended up selling when my kids were about 1 or 2, and I just couldn't keep up with them in focusing, and so I ended up trading it in or selling it and getting an EOS, you know, system. So had to get that autofocus, you know, going, and then ended up getting another F1 later, and also now I have my dad's Canon A1. So he had graduated from the FTB to an all automated system with the Canon A1. But you know, Canon through and through to this day.
I won't hold that against you.
On 35 millimeter. Admittedly, you know, my favorites today are the Pentax 672, and I also shoot with a Fuji 645, a GA 645 wide. But hey, so no, don't laugh, because my cousin from Japan gave me the camera, so it wasn't like purchased with my own money. It you know, it was actually you know, my cousin, he was in Hawaii, living in Hawaii at the time, but she shot with a Hasselblad and also with this GA, and he stopped using the GA, and we were at family dinner, and he you know, and he had the camera, and I said, oh, that's a really cool camera. He goes, yeah, I stopped using it. And I said, well, you know, I shoot, you know, a lot of film. If you don't want it, you want to sell it? He goes, oh, I'll just give it to you. So he gave it to me. So I've had it since. So that was a win. I put black gaffer's tape over the, you know, so no one knows.
I've had to eat some Fuji Crow recently, because I've definitely been public about my disdain towards Fuji. I'm frustrated with them for a lot of different things, but recently I started using their digital cameras, and they make a pretty fucking nice digital camera. And I begrudgingly appreciate it. It's hard to be like, I really like this, but it's like, but I hate you so much. It feels like an abusive relationship. And then I've got a GW690, which I absolutely love that camera, and it's one of my favorites to you know, light money on fire with. Yeah,
no, my predecessor before me had the 690, has a 690 as well, and we went to Yosemite together, and yeah, he said this is an amazing camera, so I could only imagine how nice it is.
Oh, it's so cool. Like I was in Toronto recently, and I brought a bunch of medium format film with me and the GW690, and
Hmm.
one of the rolls I shot was some Double X, which is like
Oh,
one of my favorite black and white films. Like I absolutely love that film. And I'd asked Matt, I'm like, what's the secret behind Double X? And he's like, I'll find out. And then he did, and he's like, I'm not allowed to tell you. I'm like, that's just me.
Matt, Matt, if you're looking, you're such a tease. I don't know if you joined, but you're such a tease.
But he's a great guy. I
Yeah.
absolutely adore Matt. But just the Double X is so cool. And I've shot a ton of it on 35 mil and a
Hmm.
little bit of it on 6x6. But shooting it with the 6x9, like getting those scans back and looking at those negatives, I was just like, damn, like this is nice film, but also like the Fuji lenses and like just having like a negative that's like
Yeah.
huge, just such a yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And so sharp. I mean, I've heard a lot of great things about the lens. Of course, I experienced it too in the 45 millimeter of the GA. It's a fun. I mean, it's my cheater street camera that's 2.25. That's autofocus, auto wind, and it takes all the hard work out of taking the photo for sure.
It's Jero JPEGs asks how's shooting the GA.
Yeah, sometimes it misses the focus if your subject is you know you kind of do the pre-focus, and sometimes if I'm too fast or I'm not too careful, sometimes I miss the focus, but otherwise, um, it's a great fun camera. It has all the, I mean, you can do the plus, plus or minus exposures. It has a flash.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great camera.
Yeah, those are I've been really curious about that one and then the Bronica 645 autofocus one.
Hmm.
That's kind of a cool looking one. I had a friend in Texas that had one, and it looked really cool.
Oh,
So, oh,
yeah. The only other thing is like the click to capture. I know that when that's kind of a term that's used with digital cameras, that click to capture, where you click and it kind of takes a little while for things to happen, or the shutter. Sometimes that with the GA, the click to capture time is a little slow, so
it's just a little laggy.
a little laggy. Yeah.
Oh, weird. You wouldn't expect that from a film camera.
Hmm.
I think that's why I really like the 690 is it's all mechanical. So
Ah,
it's just not a lot to go wrong with it. And when you fire it, it just goes. Like
yeah.
it's a cool camera. I have a lot of fun with that. And then I recently got sucked into the Leica world, which I never I never anticipated. And I never understood until a friend loaned me his M3 and then I was like, shit. Like now I want one.
Yeah, I think I had my chance when I knew yeah, I mean, when I was going to all the trade shows 10 years ago, when I first, inherited the film business and hung around the Leica guys, and, I just, I just didn't pull the trigger, with when I had the opportunity, but that's okay. I don't want to be seduced into the Leica family just yet. I don't know.
It's yeah, like I never thought I would. I was just like, I don't get it. But then after using one, I'm like, okay, I get it now, and
Yeah.
I
I don't know.
really.
Where's Alan got a deal in there? I don't know. Come up, Alan. what, do
Alan
you,
can
what do you have in your closet?
do. So going from like the yearbooks and stuff like that, like how did you get into Kodak? Like, what was the genesis that led into that progression?
Well, yeah, just my interest in photography. One of the interesting things. Well, I mean, I took photography in classes in the community college in Sacramento before I transferred to the University of Washington. But during that period of time, I had built up a portfolio of images, and I had noticed that at the undergraduate library at the University of Washington, the Odegaard Library, that they would have a student display of art. So I took my portfolio to the head librarian or whoever that was managing that area, and I said, hey, I've got a portfolio of images. Could I put up my pictures? And they looked at it and they said, yeah, sure. And they gave me a date. And then I had this show, and one of my professors, I studied business at the UW, and he looked at the show and he goes, hey, you know what? Your photography is great. Maybe you should work for Kodak. And I go, well, gee, I wonder what kind of jobs they have. And he goes, well, they must have jobs. They have to get product to market. And so, so that's when I started investigating how to find a job at Kodak. Looking at their annual report, finding who to contact at in the business and technical personnel that is that first entry into Kodak, and I had actually applied for a summer job as a demonstrator for their instant cameras, because their instant cameras in those days were like exploding in terms of in popularity. But when I had applied that year, their program was so successful, they just ended up hiring permanent salespeople, sales demonstrators for the stores. So what I did was, my resume was already in Rochester, and then I would end up calling the business and tech, my first contact, saying, hey, sorry, we don't have a job, but we will, keep in contact, or please keep in contact when you're ready to graduate. So during my senior year, I would wake up about 5 o'clock in the morning and call Rochester at 8 o'clock when Steve Gladwin, I remember his name, would be at work, and I'd say, hey, Steve, I'm wondering, do you have any jobs? He goes, well, it's kind of early, isn't it? I go, yeah, it's 5 o'clock, but I thought that I would try to contact you before you got busy during your day. He goes, well, that's pretty persevering of you. And, then like 6 months later, my roommate found me in the class, and he says, hey, Kodak called, they want you to call back. And so called him back, and they said, hey, we'd like you to come to Rochester for an interview. Now, in those days, I was a pretty naive kid, and I just said, hey, I really appreciate the invitation to go to Rochester to interview, but I don't have money to fly to Rochester, and how could I possibly do that, And basically they said, hey, we'll pay your way. Don't worry about, we want you to come to Rochester for an interview, so you'll get your flight and hotel room, and we'll prepare everything for you, and we'll reimburse you. And I go, wow, that's a great company. Yeah. So that was my first experience where I had gotten interviews with two of the organizations. One was the Professional and Photo Finishing Division, which was more technical sales, where I would call on photographers, professional labs, and photo finishing labs. And so that position, when I went to Rochester, I interviewed with like 7 people, and at the end of the day, I got a job offer for $14,500 to start at Kodak in 1979.
Damn.
So that was an amazing experience. There was another job that I had interviewed in San Francisco for the consumer markets division, and that was where you would go to the retail stores like Long's Drugs or Target and sell them film. So the job I ended up.
Holy shit! So, just sorry to distract you. I just
Yeah.
out of curiosity threw that in an inflation calculator, and so they started you at like 54 grand a year in like today's equivalent of money. Like that's wild. Like
Is
that's
that good?
like that for a starting job. Like
Yeah.
that's decent. Like
Yeah.
that's cool.
No, actually, no. That was actually the highest job offer I got in those days. So, and I'll just share with you my. Do you mind my sharing with you my other job offers?
Of course, yeah.
So I was offered a job with IBM, and so the IBM guy said, we're going to offer you $1,000 a month, but the harder you work, you could make how much money you could make would be infinite. You could make an infinite amount of money depending on how hard you work. And I go, oh, okay, but it's all on you. And I go, oh, okay. But that just didn't sounded a little too surreal. I mean, he was so like high pressure, like, if you work hard and if you make your numbers and if you do this, then, you could make as much money as you want. And I was like, it doesn't sound right.
You dodged Poughkeepsie, so you got that going for you there. I think Rochester is a little more interesting than Poughkeepsie.
And so the second one that job offer I did was the Procter Gamble. Hey, Mikey. Was Procter Gamble. And so it was for the Folgers division. And the guy that interviewed me was the district manager for Procter Gamble. He had a $5 million district and 5 guys under him, each having $1 million territory. So he goes, now your job would be to go to the grocery stores and think how you could best display Folgers coffee and think out of the box. Well, I'm saying out of the box. It really wasn't out of the box. He goes, you have to think creatively and how you can grow your Folgers coffee sales and get that end cap, because that's where you're going to drive the greatest sales. And you're going to go in there and merchandise and put up those coffee cans, and you'd be a proud Folgers coffee sales rep. And I go, oh, that sounds not so good. So you could imagine when Kodak offered me this job, having, started photography in high school, printed, fell in love just like a lot of photographers do that, put that first print into Dectal, saw that image come up, processed their own film, used, I was Tri-X, HC110, Dilution B. The gymnastics pictures that I sent you, those were all done with Tri-X, Push 1600, HC110, Dilution B, my Canon F1, 100 millimeter lens. I think it was a 2.8. Yeah, all those memories just kind of come back.
They're fantastic shots. So the Kodak job, was it a sales job then, or?
It was a sales job. So, and so it was a um, the professional and photo finishing markets division. And so there were
Official.
two parts of that job. The professional side was calling on the professional lab that would, generally print for the professional photographers, medium format film, weddings, commercial, and so, and also be representing film to the photographers as well. And the photo finishing part was calling on large labs that were processing the hundreds of thousands of rolls that would come through the lab, through the drugstores. And I'll give kind of examples of both. But when I joined Kodak, I was joining on the professional finishing side of the business. So it was more like the smaller lab that was more custom.
Did you ever get to work with Dwayne's?
No, because my territory was always west, was actually west and then Midwest. I started out in Hawaii, and I was responsible for like the photo finishing labs and mini labs that were growing in those days, and then the studio photographers as well.
On the IBM thing too, just kind of a funny one. I've never worked for IBM, but I really liked the whole think thing that they had there. So I got this tattoo on my forearm that I always forget about, but then sometimes strangers will like walk up to me and be like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "That's a really odd question to ask someone you don't know." And then they point at my tattoo, and I'm like, "Fuck." I'm thinking, I wish I didn't get this where I put it. But it's interesting too, like when you talk about like why you didn't like the IBM job, because of like it sounds like it was mostly a commission based job with like a little bit of base, and then the folders one, like having a big patch like that, like I do like technical pre-sales, and I do have like a bit of a number, like for this half, I think I have like a 35 million number for the district that I support. And I'm not directly responsible for it, but I need to help like advocate for the sales guys that are running that to make sure that they hit that number so that I can get my extra little bit of cake. So I couldn't do the sales side of it because being on that like higher commission area where like sure the harder you work the more money you can make, yeah, I just don't like that kind of stuff. It's not fun.
Yeah, in the early years, the technical sales job was not commissioned. It was very relational, because really what you were doing, you were going into a lab and you were working with them for a quality control standard. So you were there working with them on their process management to make sure their processes were in control. And then you were balancing their printers. You were balancing their printers to make sure that the those negatives of thousands and thousands of rolls that would go through every night would statistically be printed correctly. And so the amount of a lot of it was night work actually, because the route drivers would pick up the film from the drugstores and come in about 5 or 6 o'clock, and they would be, spooling and splicing the film together, processing it, and then the printing would probably start around between 8 and 10 o'clock, and then processing would be from 10 to 2 o'clock, and then from 2 to 6 o'clock might be the cutting and finishing of the prints. the cutting and finishing of the prints weren't my job. That was a different company, but I would sometimes do the, quality control, looking at the film coming off the processors, those kinds of things. When I joined Kodak, their process was called ep2, and they had moved from a silver bromide emulsion to a silver chloride emulsion in the paper, which basically doubled the productivity. So if you had a machine going 55 feet a minute for processing, you could increase that speed of the machine to 110 feet per minute.
Oh.
I mean, that was way too fast, because when you would clip on the paper, it would just like rip the paper out of your hand. Way too dangerous. But there was a 27-foot per minute machine, and that they made that a model 55. So they were just able to increase productivity in basically in 1980 from double the speed and productivity to accommodate the growing photo business in that day. So I was with a coworker of mine. I had gone from Hawaii to Houston and calling on a large photo finishing lab. Eckert's was the drugstore. They're no longer in business today, but my territory in those days was about $10 million. So when you consider, let's say the majority of that was probably paper. Let's say out of that, 80% was paper, so $8 million. We calculated based on the cost of paper in those days on a per square foot basis. Like the standard 4x6 print, in those days, the print was either 3.5 by 5, or the larger size was 4x6. So when I looked at $8 million in paper, now that was across like 3 large photo finishing labs and about 350 one-hour photos that were just like exploding. And so for the 4x6s, I calculated about 191 million prints through my territory that year, or 3.5 by 5 prints, 263 million 3.5 by 5 prints. So, I mean, that's really what drove the business, was printing, process and print in those days.
Well, yeah, because the 1 hour photo booths, being able to get the prints and everything, that gave Polaroid a big run for their money back in the day, because I remember reading some stuff that like the instant cameras really started to impact the film industry a bit, because people were just like, well, I don't have to wait like weeks to get photos back now. I can have a photo right away.
Right.
And then the 1 hour photo booths came out. They're like, what's 5 minutes versus an hour? Like,
Right. And of course the price per print, so the print, the package was reasonable as well.
Absolutely. Michael has a question for you here. As an analog camera shop looking to carry Kodak film, is Kodak accepting new accounts or stockists?
Yeah, right now our demand is so high that we are not able to accommodate our current dealers. So to add dealers would only create additional back orders. So yeah, we're not really accepting new accounts at this time.
Is the back order stuff because factory output isn't as high as it used to be, or?
Well, factory output has been growing. I think like 10 years ago, our capacity could meet demand, because the capacity was like perhaps in a decline, and for the last probably 8 years, the volume has been growing and increasing year after year. So it's been a really, good situation, this renaissance to analog. I mean, since I've been, and it's not because of me. I mean, I just happen to be like in this ride, and and in the last 10 years, things have just took a turn. And so when you're managing a decline, you're going, well, there's only so much capacity that you need, and I guess we probably didn't think we were going to have the growth that we might have had this last 10 years. So
Well,
I
no,
guess
you guys shrunk like incredibly fast too. Like I remember on the factory tour, one of the guys at the finishing plant was saying that like you guys lost like 90% of your business in like 3 months when um, cinemas went to digital over film. It was just like all that money just like evaporated, and you guys had to contract quickly because you had to sort of stem the hemorrhaging somehow.
well, the print film for sure, right? If you had 30,000 screens, and then you didn't, because there was a transition in digital. You no longer had to send the cans of print film, the millions of linear feet, that dissipated. And of course, digital cameras. The consumer market was our largest market, right? You push a button, we do the rest. The that that the point and shoot cameras, all that, just, you didn't need that when people said, hey, I can shoot a digital camera. You could buy a digital camera for $100 and shoot like crazy. And I think, well, today I don't think anybody could find those digital files on their hard drive if their hard drive is still readable.
Yeah, so it's on one of the episodes recently. We ended up talking a bunch about like digital storage and like how to like maintain integrity of your digital files and things like that. Which a few people were like, "This is supposed to be a photography chat. Why are you talking about like backing things up?" And it's like, well, because a lot of us do shoot film, but a lot of us don't print it either. Like it gets scanned for the most part. So it's like even though we're shooting on an analog medium, it's ending on a digital platform. And where those digital files go, like that's like to your point, it's kind of a black hole. Like whereas like if you have prints, like you could forget about those prints in a shelf somewhere, but like one day you're going to come across that shelf and you're going to find those prints again, and they're still going to look just as good as when you got them.
Yeah, and I think that from the wedding industry and some of the wedding photographers that shoot film, they get their life back by shooting film, because all today the labs that are processing film touch every frame. So they're looking at every frame. They're doing the density correction. They're doing the color correction specific to the photographer's need. And so when they get those files back, they're pretty much ready for production, and you have to just do very little post. So the photographer gets their life back. So no one. So I think that no. So I mean, I think that's one of the alluring things of why photographers are moving to film, because they're pushing all the work onto the lab so that they can have more free time in the creative aspects.
Well, and that's a really good point too, because like that's honestly what got me into shooting film a lot was when I moved to Toronto in 2017. I started shooting again. I picked up like a digital camera and forgot how much I hate editing. I just really don't like it. It kind of annoys me. And then I started getting into film a little bit, and it was just such a rabbit hole because the lab there that I was using, shout out to Downtown Camera in
Hmm.
Toronto. If
Yeah.
you're in the Toronto area and you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
see, yeah, they're great.
Oh,
And
yeah. Claudia and Harry, for sure.
Claudia and
Gotta,
Harry and
gotta
Stan,
love them.
absolutely. Shout out to Nigel in the used department. If you ever need like any like info or anything, Nigel is a fantastic dude, and Fab and Ryan and everyone at the front desk are great. But the people in the lab are fantastic, and it made it so easy because as long as I nailed my focus and my exposure, I didn't have to do anything because their scans were so great, and so
Hmm.
that just made me want to shoot more film because it was just easy.
Yeah.
And then it was like, you start playing with the different stocks, and when you want a different feel, you're like, I'm going to do Portra 400 for this one, or like, I think I'll shoot like Ektar for this, or maybe
Mhm.
I'll go like, shoot some Tri-X or some Ilford. Yeah, I do. I love Mike and I love Ilford. They're a great film too. But yeah, they just made it so easy, and so I could see that that's something that would draw people into wanting to do film because like if you find a good competent lab,
Yeah.
it just makes your life so much easier. Like Claudia was telling me a story of she had a couple of advertising photographers there, and
Hmm.
there's one guy that insists on just shooting film, and a couple of like the digital guys make fun of him for it, but he always gets his work output done faster because he'll shoot like maybe 2 or 3 rolls,
Uh,
uh, drop them off at Downtown Camera, and either get them back same day or next day. um, well, the other guy shot like, maybe 1,000 pictures, and now he's having to sift through all of the photos and pick which one actually works and then edit those ones out. And, the guy that shot film, he already got his scans back and picked the ones he liked and submitted them.
yeah, I know. As good as a photographer that you might be, if you've got a digital camera and you can shoot 9 frames a second, I think sometimes you're just going to shoot 9 frames a second because you can,
Yeah.
and you don't realize that until you like start that editing process, and you're going like you're like at the optometrist, right? You go A B A B A B
Yeah.
C B C
And
D.
then you pick one, and then you're like, you get to another one, you're like, oh, fuck, maybe this one was better than the A B, and so you just end up second guessing so much. And
And
I've
it's so
noticed like,
and it's
oh,
so hard to delete, right? I mean, it's so
yeah,
hard to delete because you would have been better off if you chose out of that series to delete the rest, but you don't do that.
no, because you never delete. Um, like I've noticed because I've been shooting digital a little bit more the last few months, it's made me a bit lazy. And like, just because you can, you do kind of thing. So it's like, if I was shooting film and I saw something, I would just take one shot of it. But, with digital, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do it like this, or maybe I'll try like a different, like, I ended up taking like 10 shots of the same thing when
Mm-hmm.
if I was like shooting film, it just would have been one shot.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're composing yourself, right? I mean, you're just like being very careful. First, I mean, when you're looking through a viewfinder of a film camera, I mean, you're looking at all the corners, you're looking at composition. For some reason, when you're doing digital, it's just a totally different feel. You don't have the same thought process because I'm always thinking like, what is the aperture? Am I going to be wide open? Do I need to close down? I mean, you're thinking in equivalent exposures a lot of the times.
I do have to say, and this is where I get a little bit begrudging about Fuji. I've been playing with the X Pro series, like their digital rangefinders,
Uh-huh.
and I've been really digging it because it does make me think a little bit more in like film with like having the rangefinder there, and like um, I've noticed it's kind of slowed me down a little bit, which has been interesting because like I've never had that experience with any of my other digital cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've been really liking that about the Fuji, but then it also makes me kind of bitter because it's like I still want to hate you. But like Big Head Taco, I don't know if you ever come across him. He's been trying to get me to show Fuji some love for a while. And then my friend Clint, who loaned me the Leica, he's also a big Fuji advocate. So I was like, well, you know, I'm going to try it out because I trust the opinion of these guys. And now I've gone down this Fuji rabbit hole that makes me feel dirty some days. I feel like Dan, though, had...
No comment.
I feel like Dan here had a point, though, about the Kodak stuff. And this also kind of resonated with something that one of the gentlemen on the tour told me, where he said, I read somewhere that there's also a labor issue. Not enough people with knowledge to run the factories, and having to train new people has been causing an issue with supply. And when I was doing the factory tour, there was like a couple of people that echoed that they were concerned that they're having trouble finding new blood for the factory. Like factory jobs just, I guess, aren't as sexy as they used to be. Like, you know, people used to flock to work at the Kodak factory. And now, like, you know, one guy was saying that a lot of the people that he works with are all at retirement age, and there's like no new trainees or anything. And so I was like,
well, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you're still young. You got like what, another 30 years left?
At least,
Yeah.
you know. I love representing film. You know, I feel that I've got the best job in the company. You know, it's kind of like I've gone full circle, because I started out as a technical sales representative, and you know, in a way representing film, but also paper and chemicals. I mean, I was responsible for the whole package. Kind of morphed into calling on. So I went from Hawaii being a combined technical sales representative, calling on professional labs, photographers, and finishing labs. Went to Houston and called on mostly finishing labs and retail mini labs, and then went back to Hawaii and calling on mini labs, camera stores, and then I was expanded into food and drug and mass stores. So, and travel leisure, which means I called on, let's say, the Kodak Hula Show. I was responsible for the Kodak Hula Show, for luau's, any travel leisure, like maybe a helicopter company that might have a retail store. So I had a broad experience in Hawaii. Probably had every kind of job you could possibly have, you know, working for Kodak in Honolulu, and then came back to the mainland here in Los Angeles for the last 20 years, and then kind of got more specialized, and now, you know, responsible for film again. And so it's gone full circle, and it's come to a place where, you know, I had my beginnings, and it just really, I mean, I just got to pinch myself, because it's something that I've always loved and continue to represent. And just, I want to be that, you know, I want to be remembered as that guy, right? And I get a little choked up, because when I started photography, I went to like a Nikon school of photography, and at the end I asked this guy a question, and you know, he answered me. He was the Nikon rep, and I kind of feel like, oh yeah, the dude talked to me. I mean, he's like the Nikon guy. And so I kind of feel the same responsibility to be an approachable guy representing film, you know. And I get choked up about that, because I really take it to heart, you know.
It's really beautiful, Tim. I can tell that. Like, you know, I was kind of curious when you asked like what my address was. Like, you know, I had no expectation you were going to, but like this, this was an absolutely beautiful gesture, and you don't see that kind of stuff anymore. And you know, I've seen like your social media posts, and like, you know, it's cool you're hanging out with, I guess I hang out with Han. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
pretty
No,
cool.
yeah, that was great. It was a wonderful day. I mean, just to, go to the Huntington Library grounds and just hang out, have lunch, and just, get to know each other. Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. Like I can't wait to actually meet her in person one of these days. But it's great that like people like you exist, because it's important to have that. And you know, they're one of the unfortunate things in the photography world. There's a lot of gatekeepers out there, and people that are just kind of like dinguses, for lack of better word. But I've met a few real like menches out there in photography, like, you know, Mike Bain, definitely one of them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mike's
Grant,
great.
no, Mike is great, and
Yeah, yeah.
I've been trying to get Mike on, and he's like, "Nah, I'm not that interesting." I'm like, "Bullshit, Mike, you're very interesting."
He's totally interesting. Mike, if you're looking, dude, you got
He's, I think it's mostly he doesn't want to be on like the social aspect of things, but like he's a fantastic guy. I got to meet him at the Film Padea in San Clemente, and you know, it was really cool just how open he was. And the same thing with Grant Britton, like, you know,
Mm,
sitting down
yeah.
and chatting with him there, and just how open he's been. And it's really nice that there's people like you guys out there that have these wealths of knowledge, that don't just keep them and just be like, no, this is mine for like my success. Like you, if someone reaches out to you, you're open to share, and like that's such a cool thing.
No, absolutely.
So thank you. I appreciate that, Tim.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I do the things I do are pretty random. I mean, when I look at, I mean, when I look at Instagram, I try to, look at uh, some of the new people, or where they're at, whether they're a student or whether a beginner, and I may randomly reach out to them and say, "Hey, do you mind my reaching out, or can I have permission to talk to you? And I like your images, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit, and maybe I can send you some free film." I don't know.
Who's gonna say no to free film?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my entree. Want some film? No.
Hey kid, you want some film? That's great though. On the film thing though, I do have a question here that Lillian asked earlier that I missed.
Sure.
Um, do you know if the film width has changed over the years? From the 50s to now, some old analog cameras can't hold 35 millimeter film, it seems. The size is smaller.
No, the 35 millimeter, 35 millimeter film is pretty exacting. So I can't say that the film, the width, can't get smaller. Now, there has been a change in, some of the film in terms of, acetate versus estar. So some of the films are now being coated on estar film. Estar, which is a thinner film, but the acetate is also it's standard. So I'd say thickness is possible, because medium format film also is on a thinner base than 35 millimeter. So kind of depends on what she's talking about. From 35 millimeter, the width wouldn't change.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine so.
No, that would screw it up. Could say that would screw everything up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of would. I mean, the base is an interesting thing too, because I think that was like the coolest part. Oh, speak of the devil, there's Han. Um, that was the coolest part of the tour of the factory was the base plant. Like that place still blows my mind. Like it's been years since I saw it. I'm still like processing like the scale of that building and that machine that
Hmm.
makes the base. Like that was such a cool thing to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, to see, I was lucky enough to, yeah, see that tour also, but to see the slitting operation, the perfing operation, just the whole finishing line, and
The
it's
perf
really,
machine was crazy.
it's really pretty amazing, right? I mean,
Well, and the guy that runs the perf machine, he's like, you know, 10, 15 years ago, this was like a top secret room. Like no one could see this because like this technology, like no one has this in the world. And he's like, now no one really gives enough shit about a film to like try and rip off this machine. So like you guys get to see it today.
oh, well, so I'll give a plug to Bob Shamebrook's book because a lot of the technology is public today. So, Bob Shamebrook's he wrote this book, making Kodak film, and
Oh,
you know
cool.
it's for sale. So you could you know buy the book. So the thing is from soup to nuts in terms of understanding uh, how film is made. I mean, it's just really, amazing that, you could go on that tour and that they put 200 independent things together in a kettle and they can coat it on a base and there's about, 14 layers of stuff in there. And, and when you expose it, you get great images.
Yeah, the coding was crazy to see too. And I remember Matt was telling us a story of like how sensitive coding is, that there was like a VIP tour going on and people were there while they were coding and just them talking within the vicinity of the machine wavered the stream of the emulsion onto the base and they had to like scrap that production because the sound waves from like 20, 30 feet away from the machine like ended up rippling it.
There's a story in this book where, like in the 50s when they had the nuclear tests in Nevada. So there was a nuclear test and there was a nuclear plume and it rained. It rained in the water that was used in this paper making plant. That paper was used as the interweaving in X-rays, in between the X-ray film, and and then there were artifacts in the X-ray film as a result of this
Oh, from the rain.
from the rain that was radioactive. I mean, it was kind of an amazing little excerpt in this that they could trace back that there was a nuclear test that created this plume, traveled from Nevada to Iowa or wherever this paper was being made, and created this artifacting associated with that nuclear test. I mean, it was just like, wow.
That's well, and it's like the mustard plant affecting the gelatin. That was a crazy one too, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
the cows got into a field that had mustard plants, and the mustard got into like their like their bones and stuff, like the sulfur from it, and it screwed up a batch of emulsion, and they
Mm-hmm.
traced it back to like this batch of cows that got escaped the farm and like were eating like mustard plants and like
Yeah, it's just really it's amazing the kind of research that was done to just try to figure out, well, what really did cause the problem.
well, and it's wild because like that's one of the things I really like about film is that being like an organic based thing, it's almost like a living items
Mm-hmm.
on its own. And like that's what I kind of find makes expired film really interesting is like depending on how that film was taken care of or not taken care of, affects like what it turns into and affects the result of what you get out of it. And it's a really interesting object because it can be very dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And to that point, Mark had a question here.
Uh,
Can Tim comment on the lifespan of modern film bases in terms of degradation of the plastic polymers?
no,
That sounds more like an engineering question.
that was a hard one. You know, that's a thesis. That would be something. That'd probably be something for Matt Stoffel. I wouldn't be able to comment on that. I mean, you know, when in the photo technology group, when I worked there, I mean, that's where I started before I went into technical sales training. But I mean, that was where they worked on the paper process and the paper. You know, they married the paper and the paper process and the films so that, you know, the color films and the color processes, and there was a systems group that married through their photographic systems, you know, the printing, processing of the negatives, and then finally, you know, printing, and it was all based on, you know, grayscales, and then converting that into, you know, images of real people. But the thing is that when you were working with step tablets and trying to create that perfect image, it was, you know, based on those multi-layers, the cyan, magenta, and yellow layers, you know, in a 3 minute, 15-second process at 100 degrees, plus or minus a quarter degree. And that when you started that process, when the films went into that developer, that in 3 minutes and 15 seconds, that the red, you know, the cyan, magenta, and yellow layers would finish across that finish line at the same time, because you wanted that characteristic curve to be nice and smooth and go from lower left to higher, you know, to the toe to the shoulder. So, I mean, it was an amazing experience just to see how the chemical engineers, the photographic engineers, design film, because, you know, I mean, to this day, it's just, you know, amazing, as you say, you know, an organic material that can generate, you know, reproduce.
Well, even when they're building the emulsions, like when they're growing the crystals, and like, you know, they've got those cauldrons in the dark that they're just like putting all the stuff in, like that's just wild too. Like they're growing crystals to go a certain way, and that's where I got interested about the double X, because I was like, is it like a marriage of like Tri-X and T-Max or something else? And Matt was like, you got me curious about that now, so he wanted to find out, and then he's like, yeah, I know, but you don't get to know.
Yeah, Matt's a tease.
It was also cool to see the emulsion before it goes, like when they're finished it in the cauldrons, and like it almost feels and looks like Jello, like a weird gray Jello.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the guys that don't eat it though, he's like, yeah, some
Yeah.
people are tempted to like bite into it because it looks like you could maybe do that, but he's like, we wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, it's not the same as the, you know, the layered Jello that, you know, mom and grandma made, you know.
Exactly. You know, it does have gelatin in it, but there's a lot of like silver and other
Yeah.
things. Like it was cool. The other thing that was like wild about Kodak plant was like it was the first time I had ever like experienced the idea of buildings as machines. And I never thought about that concept before, that like a building is not a building is a machine. And that was an interesting thing to have, like wrap my mind around, where it's like, yeah, that 13-story building there, it's not. It's like a massive photocopier. Like
Yeah. You know, that was I probably been in that building years ago, but you know, I was when I was visiting Rochester, and I called Matt up, and he was so accommodating to, you know, on short notice. I said, hey, I'm going to be in town for a couple more days. Can I like slip into the plant and check it out? And he was more than accommodating. Such a gentleman. I really appreciated just having that experience again of just seeing that whole, you know, production side of of filmmaking. Yeah, it was great.
He's a great dude and such an advocate for film too. Like I feel like, you know, he's another person in like the same realm as you, where just very open and wants to like help support the community, and like that's such a great thing to have.
For sure. No, absolutely.
What in all of your decades of like, you know, being part of the film community, what are a couple of your like favorite moments?
Oh, you didn't tell me you were going to ask me that. Oh, you know, gosh, I just, you know, some of the really nice moments that I've had, probably since I've been on the mainland. I've just attended just an amazing amount of photo workshops and trade shows. You know, the great thing about trade shows is that you're able to, you know, thousands of people are able to come through, and you can, you know, talk about, you know, your experiences or answer questions. But I think that really, you know, the moments that I enjoy most is like interacting with the photographers that, you know, are really, you know, passionate and trying to learn about how to better their craft and how to use, you know, film or expose film, you know, in the best way that they can, and be creative. I think that one of the things also about attending workshops is that I'm learning too, because I started in that in the film side of just being a photographer and just loving photography. I mean, I'm learning from the photographers that I run into, because they're teaching composition, they're teaching, they're directing, you know. So, you know, to hear somebody direct somebody in terms of how to pose and how to look, and I mean, it's being a lifelong, being in photography and being passionate is being a lifelong learner as well, because there's always so much to learn. In this, it's just it's something that I just, again, you know, really appreciate. You know, yeah, I mean, it's just a great experience to be amongst the photography community as they're you know, enjoying creating. I mean, it's really what I love about my job. I mean, I'm able to represent, but also join in, you know, break bread together.
I mean, you know, it's nice to be able to break bread with people when you have a common thread and appreciation of things, and that's really cool. Like I like your perspective of that. That's a wonderful perspective. Um, what would be some of your favorite photographers that you're really digging right now?
Oh, well, you know, I saw Jennifer Lawrence. You know, she does some magical things with Ektar. Wendy Laurel in Hawaii. So I've been kind of looking at more of the what I love about Ektar is the saturation and the sharpness, the contrast that comes out of that. So certainly, well, really.
Megan Shoots Film has done some really, really beautiful stuff with Ektar.
Who?
Megan Shoots Film.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then of course I've been, meeting some young photographers like Han, like Hannah Wynn, H4 and then H. her Instagram. She shoots with Mamiya in the Hasselblad. I mean, her images are like amazingly sharp, I know that, I mean, for the longest time, I mean, Ryan Muirhead, I've known Ryan for so many years and enjoying his, his black and white work, color work.
His work is beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. There are so many photographers that I've met and are fans of.
It's hard to pick just one, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Jeffrey is wondering if there's anything you'd like to do with film or photography that you haven't done yet.
That's a good question. I continue to. I think one of my projects that I have just started doing, I've done it informally, but more direct, is just like taking images of the photographers I know. So like when I hung out with Han, is, hey, could we take pictures of each other? And so, and I think I want to do a project like that and photograph, the photographers that I've known over the years, have them on the other side of my camera.
And that is like a really cool thing. Like Dave Rollins recently just put out a book called shit. My memory's terrible. Let me just grab it just a sec.
Thank you, Han.
Portrait of a Photographer. So Dave,
oh yeah. Oh, cool.
Dave Rollins, he lives in the Bay Area, and amazing, like, large format photographer, like, and another one of those people that has so much knowledge and is just so happy to share it and is just a very genuine person. But he set out with this project to do one camera, one lens, one film type. So it was with his with his Crown Graphic, an Aero Ektar lens, and then I think it was Tri-X. And he just went out and shot all these like different photographers. I think you know that one.
Nice.
There's a good shot of Han. There's a Raymond Molinar.
Nice.
We were just talking about this guy. There's Grant. The great shot of Grant. And who else do you got in here? There's a real legend, Mr. Lee.
That's nice. That's nice. So
yeah. Oh, and everyone knows this guy. You can't trust this guy. He's a bad news bear. I'm just kidding. JP's a good cat. I love JP. And Starla was great. I just had Starla on a couple episodes ago, and like she's fantastic.
Oh yeah. I think I remember jumping in that.
Yeah, and then like I'll let it slip, but I think this gentleman might be joining us on the chat for season 3. I'm kind of excited to maybe have him on there. And then my all-time favorite photo that someone's ever taken of me, which this is why I think this kind of idea is cool, and like that's awesome that you also want to do it too. Is like, you know, we spend a lot of time behind the lens, but like we don't often let other people take photos of us. And
Right,
you know,
right.
one of my all-time favorite photos ever taken of me is one that Dave did in the book here. I can't remember where it is. Yeah, he took this outside of the Denton Camera Exchange in Denton, Texas. It's like one of my favorite photos. So it's
Denton.
this.
Oh, Denton. Oh, so that's north. That's like north of Dallas, right?
Yeah, it's like 40 half hour, 45 minutes outside of Dallas.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
part of the DFW. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Jason, you're such a dick. Thumbs down for me, but all good for Ray Barbie. But yeah, like that'd be like such a cool idea to do more of this. Like I would love to see more photographers capturing the people that they know and like, you know, their friends and stuff. And you have like a very interesting position where it's like, you know, you have this opportunity to go out and meet photographers all over the place, and
Yeah,
that would be a really cool project to see that from your perspective.
yeah. One of my, one of the nicest photographers that is John Sexton. He used to be an assistant to Ansel Adams, and I've just had the pleasure to be able to meet him over the years and spend time with him and at Point Lobos and in the Monterey Peninsula, and see him teach large format photography to his his workshop folks. And yeah, he just does some beautiful black and white work, and I mean, he's one of my favorite photographers for sure on the black and white side of things.
That's really cool. I'm gonna have to check out his stuff. I'm not really familiar with him.
I do have opportunities to talk and meet Alan Ross. He does the printing, for all of Ansel Adams negatives.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, I mean he's the guy, so it's
so he followed like all of Ansel's recipes for like how he had it all set up to like, you know, do the dodging and burning and all that stuff to make his
right. The first time I saw that was like in John Sexton's workshop. It's just like a translucent page of this, you dodge and burn this part for a couple seconds. You use this tool for burning in. Yeah, it's like this whole recipe or instruction book of how to do things. And they know that they soup that print for 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes and you're done. It's not 45 seconds, or it's not until it looks good. It's
a minute.
It's, yeah.
Well, there's an irony to like all that stuff with like Ansel Adams and stuff, because like, you know, going to like gatekeepers and people that are kind of like, you know, jerks in photography that are like, oh, it needs to be done in camera, and like, you know, it's not pure if you have to like edit or anything. And it's like Ansel Adams was doing like the OG Photoshop back in the day. Like,
Yeah.
if you saw like an out of camera photo of Ansel Adams, you'd be like, this guy's a hack. He has no idea what the fuck he's doing. But yeah, it's what makes his photos magical. And like so many of those, like, you know, Henri Cartier.
Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Yes, him, and oh shit, my mind's just blanking. But like all of those like old fantastic black and white photographers, like Cian, all their stuff was like, one part was getting the photo, but then the other part was making the magic happen in the darkroom to get the photo the way they wanted that image to be.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine how much paper. There's a story, and this was much before my time because I was at a Society of Photographic Educators conference, and the educator, was probably in his, 60s, and so he said he was at an Ansel Adams workshop. It was a dye transfer workshop. And so we had sent, Eastman Kodak had sent it must have been a truckload of dye transfer materials for this workshop. And they were making large prints. And so in order to be able to make those prints, they ended up going to like a toy shop to get one of those kids round or rectangular
like a play pool.
And so in order the group would do their exposures, and then they'd surround the pool and they'd kick the pool to agitate it. And, and they would do it for the whole bass, but they just said that the amount of materials in the day, of course, if you're in 1980, when I happened to be at the right place, and they took a picture of me for the annual report. But I kept that, and I recently looked at it, and Kodak 1980 was about a $10 billion company. The photo segment was about maybe half of that, maybe $6 billion of that. And the profitability, I want to say, was around like $3 billion. So in those days, I mean, Kodak's photo business was mega billions, right? And so that's when they had all the research and development. When I joined Kodak, well, that same annual report said they talked about the research nickel, and so 5% or 5 cents out of every dollar went to research and development in their product line and businesses. So they were, needless to say, I mean, they were certainly the photographic leader, in the marketplace in the day. Yeah, there were a lot of resources back then, for sure.
Yeah, it's someone like you mentioned the color burst instant camera, and another person mentioned it also in the comments there. That was an interesting story there, because that was quite the battle between Kodak and Polaroid, and that was a huge L for Kodak, I think, because just that ruling overnight basically rendered every single Kodak instant camera useless, overnight. And
Yeah.
Were you at Kodak during that time, like when that ruling,
Oh,
or was that before?
yeah. Yeah, because it was still growing, and the instant product, I have to say, the instant product that Kodak made was really high quality. The color was great. They had come out with like a luster finish, so it was it was didn't leave fingerprints. It was a rectangular image. Color quality was beautiful, but basically they said, hey, you violated some patents, and so what? Yeah, don't pass go, don't collect $200. Pay a fine.
Well, it was interesting too because like Kodak played a role in helping Polaroid become the company it turned into.
Mm.
Because you guys had made a lot of their negatives and even some of the like positive material for the
Yeah,
original.
the positive negative material. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there was like I remember reading because I did a Polaroid workshop a few years back, and so I did all this like research into like the history of Polaroid, and there were a bunch of executives at Kodak that were like pleading with Eastman not to do it, and he's like, ah, whatever, money's money. And they're like, yeah, but these guys could be a competitor, and he's like, no, it's a toy, like whatever, take their money. And then it just like it grew into something a lot bigger than I don't think anyone ever really anticipated it would turn into.
Yeah. No, I don't know any of the I don't know any of the history. The that all that did actually that that taught me about the time value of money, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think, and I can't remember. I'll just use loose numbers, but the fine was like, I don't know, probably $500 million, four or $500 million. And so because I think because the suit went on for like, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, what the court did is they said, well, the time value of money of that $400 or $500 million represents X amount of interest, so therefore the fine is like $900 million or something like that. So when it was explained that way, that just taught me the time value of money. That I mean, if you have $400 million and you put it in the bank, 10 years later it should be $900 million. That was, I mean, that just taught me that I should start saving money so that my $50 could turn into 90.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
It's interesting though, like those lessons you learn from business stuff like that, because yeah, I've definitely gleaned a few things from my sales job that I'd never really understood but before. Um, yeah, it's kind of wild. And yeah, someone here mentioned Type 55, which was an interesting one because that had a negative and positive from Kodak, and that was because Ansel Adams was actually on staff by Polaroid, so
Mm.
Polaroid paid a lot of artists to be like artists and staff for them to like test film out and things like that, and Ansel was one of them.
Mm.
And like, yeah, this is kind of neat, but it's like kind of a toy until you can have a negative, like whatever, like it's not serious until there's a negative, and they created Type 55 because Ansel wanted a negative,
Mm.
which was kind of cool. And yeah, someone's like
Yeah.
Ansel had clout, and like yeah, he definitely did.
Yeah, he had clout. Yeah, no doubt about it. He had clout. Yeah. Um, I'm sure, I know he, in the early years, he um, shot a lot of, I think, double X. And then when Tri-X were introduced in 54, Tri-X was like 2X the speed. So double X was like 100, ISO 100, and well, ASA 100. And then Tri-X was introduced to the ASA of 200. So got a little extra stop there.
Yeah, get a little extra jam out of it.
Yeah.
So what is your kind of like favorite stuff that you like to shoot now?
It's kind of really on my Instagram. like on Father's Day, we went to Monterey, and I took that journey, back to Point Lobos, and just taking, scenery pictures, Monterey Coast, Point Lobos. I mean, I really enjoy that that aspect. And then again, just getting into portraiture, getting that Pentax 6.7 and the 105-24, and putting that in people's faces and taking pictures of people.
Nice.
So it's all been going back, scenery, people. Yeah.
I really loved your scenery shots. So it's like before you sent those gym ones for the post I did last week, I kind of like snuck on your Instagram and like I screenshotted a couple of your photos there. And I really love the colors of the ocean shots that you had there. Like they just,
Thanks.
they look so good.
Thank you. The other interesting pictures were like I thought were not what I'm used to, were the street pictures in New York.
I like those.
But I just happened to I would ordinarily go to Photo Plus every year, and it would always be around Halloween. So one year I just said, oh, I'm going to just walk around and, try to catch the characters. And I just, I just thought some of those shots were some of my funnest, catching the women with the different wigs on.
I like that. That was good with the multiple wigs.
Yeah.
And there was a guy with the pimp hat.
Yeah.
I used that one, but then I ran out of room to post. But I like that one.
Right. I know. It's just
on that like sort of like street kind of point and shoot. Rosie asked a question in a comment before, where she noticed that Kodak's releasing that the black and white disposable. Which looks cool. Tri-X is an awesome film. But was just kind of curious that, like, with Lomography leaning more towards like a reusable style camera, and Ilford doing like a similar kind of thing, is Kodak thinking of doing like a kind of like reusable disposable at some point?
That's a good question. The thing is, like Kodak, Eastman Kodak is a motion picture company, graphics company, in a business licensing business, and so they currently have a licensee, I believe Sino-Promise in Asia, that is licensing the M35, M38 reloadable camera that's branded Kodak. So there is that product being offered today, and I think that we wanted to offer an option, a black and white option, because of the the iconic film that Tri-X is, but also that we think it's going to be popular, and so
yeah,
because the single-use cameras today, have become very popular in all brands, and so it was just offering an option to the marketplace, into the community. So
I'm kind of curious though. So you've released one with Tri-X, but what about T-Max? Where's the love there? Or what about like a 1600, or not the 3200 T-Max?
Yeah,
that'd be a cool point and shoot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Tri-X from like a volume standpoint is probably our most popular film. So it would just lean. I think it's just natural for us to have the the Tri-X product in the camera.
I mean, I do love Tri-X a lot, but I mean, I got a real soft spot for the P3200 too.
Yeah, 3200 is really a nice. It's a nice film. I can't disagree with you. I love all my children. Sorry. I'm very defensive about all my children.
They're all great.
Yeah,
I just don't like Ektachrome, but
when I grew up in a family of four, 2 girls and 2 boys, and my mom worked for a department store, and no matter what, if she bought anything at that department store, she bought 4 of everything, so it's because she loved her children equally. It didn't matter, it just had to be 4 of the same thing. So anyway, I don't know if that's off topic, but
I think there's going to be some daddy jokes now.
No daddy jokes.
It's going to be like Tim, the film daddy.
My daughters, in any of these projects that I do or talks, my daughters are always like, well, Dad, please, don't creep anybody out. Don't.
I don't think you've gone into that realm of creeping anyone. Where is it here? M Suhor. They have a question. Any new films in the Kodak lineup?
Yeah, there's always stuff like on the drawing board. It's just that, whenever you're doing things, you're doing a lot of tests, and when you do tests, it just takes a long time. Nothing, that I can talk about. It's just that when you're talking about new things just I want to use an example like Ektachrome. When they announced Ektachrome, hey, we're coming out with Ektachrome, it went through a lot of iterations before it could come out in its I have my phone plugged in, but it said low power. I wonder, whoops.
Oh no, your power's running out there. Well, if it's dying there, I
don't know how my power. I don't know how it's. No, I'm just Oh, hold on.
It was plugged in, but not plugged in.
Yeah, yeah. How'd that work? There you go.
Wow. Someone's saying 120 gold. That would be an interesting film.
Yeah. So
someone else in the comment, lower price point ? Which I think is wishful thinking because we all know the prices have gone up.
Sorry.
Well, so did you read that? I can't remember who posted the article, but there was like an article that went
Ludwig out of Germany. The article looking back at the price of film and looking at inflation and looking at the consumer price index, and basically came out with the conclusion that film prices are
they normalized basically.
Normalized, yeah,
because it's like all of the film companies had to like sell film for cheaper because they just weren't selling it. So some of them were taking a loss or like taking a hit. And now it's like, everyone's complaining about the film price, but that article is interesting because it's basically stated that like, film prices are back to where they were, like the regular peak of film. And it's like the same thing with Polaroid. When people complain about Polaroid being expensive, if you look at how much a pack of Polaroid cost back in the day versus how much it costs now, like it's really not different when you factor in inflation and all of those things. Like Polaroid was always an expensive thing to use.
Yeah, always on a per print basis for sure. It was always, I don't know. I always thought, hey, it's always $1 a print or something.
Yeah, now it's I think it's like $1.50 or something, or oh no, more than that, because it's like $25 for a pack, and then what does that work out to? I can't do my maths today, so it's like 25. It's like $3 and change a shot
Today. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's if you're doing the I-type film. That's not the one with the battery pack. The one with the battery pack. The one with the battery pack is like $3.75 a shot. I feel like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are they? So is the battery reusable, or is it?
Well, so like Polaroid for their integral films manufacture 3 distinct types of it right now. There's the SX70 film, which is for all the SX70 cameras, and that's 160 ISO, and it has a battery in it. There's the 600 film, which is for like all of the legacy 600 Polaroids, 640 ISO with the battery pack in it. And then they created I-type, which is for their new cameras that have a battery in the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And so the film cartridge doesn't need a battery in it. So they sell that for like $5 cheaper because they don't have to put a battery in that. But then you can buy adapters and stuff. Like there's companies like Resvot and other things that make like attachments so you can have an external battery pack on a Polaroid.
Yeah, you know what? You better stop talking about Polaroid because I don't want to go through that rabbit hole of.
That's fair. But there is a question here that has been asked a couple of times, and I've been dodging it a little bit, but it keeps coming up. I feel like Dan is wondering if Kodak will ever get back in the instant game, and if they will try to resurrect pack film.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a production thing that that would be, Matt Stoffel would be someone to see whether there's something, the one thing I don't know is that, if the patents must have run out, right? I mean,
no, Fuji still holds them. Because the Polaroid ones are gone, but Fuji still has theirs, and they refused to give them up a few years back.
Oh, I see.
I don't know. I don't think personally, I don't think pack film is ever coming back again. The closest we'll ever get to it is the one instant from Super Sense.
Yeah, maybe so.
It's expensive, but like, yeah.
Yeah, pack film. I don't know anything about. I don't have any research or knowledge about pack film at all. Can't really speak to that. That's probably something that is better directed to Matt or somebody in Kodak's manufacturing operations.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Like pack film is like it's a very upsetting, like it's almost as upsetting as the Spectra topic with Polaroid people. They get very upset about that stuff. It's a very passionate community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
I've never been a part of that community, so that's just foreign to me.
Well, we would welcome you with open arms. Because a lot of us that do the instant film also shoot a lot of the regular film too, and
yeah,
I've definitely given a lot more money than I like to think about towards Kodak. with film. Yeah, definitely have a bit of a film addiction. Yeah.
All
It's not a
right.
bad.
No, it's not a bad thing. You know, there's other vices you could spend your money on.
Right here. I feel like Dan says, Tim, I would love to send you a Polaroid. Like a Polaroid photo.
Okay.
Well, I feel like Dan, maybe send Tim a DM on the Instagrams, and you could probably work something out there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not like a Polaroid dick pic or something like that, because that would be a little weird. But
Yeah.
And,
None of those, please. Well, it's heading on. I thought these were going to be an hour, but it looks like we've talked quite a bit.
we have, and yeah, it's we've gone on here a little bit, and I want to say thank you so much, Tim. It has been excellent chatting with you. I've had a really great time. It's been great to get to know you more, and I appreciate your passion for the community. Like, it's great to have ambassadors like you out there.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. You're having fun when, an hour, talk ends up like a couple hours, right? So,
wait, Michael's got one more hot take here before we take off. With the film shortages, have you noticed the film distributors have been gouging price on Amazon selling platforms?
Yeah. So the thing about Amazon is that we don't sell to Amazon. So, I can't speak. I can't speak to Amazon. I could say that, I know that if you're in California, Sammy's Camera, or, when I think about the West Coast, right? Sammy's Camera, Freestyle, Film Supply Club. There's Looking Glass in Berkeley. There's Glass Key in San Francisco. Pro Photo Supply in Portland. Glazers in Seattle. Of course, there's always like B&H and Adorama and Unique in Canada. Downtown Camera. They do a great job.
Beau Photo in Vancouver. Can't forget Nicole.
No, can't forget Nicole. No, never. Hope she's not on. Tim, how dare you? Yeah, I'm gonna get that nasty gram tomorrow in the morning. Wake up call. So.
Not at all. But yeah, I guess it's tough because you can't control what Amazon is doing there. So.
No, because I got a weird request like, oh, I want to buy single rolls of Portrait 400, and I go, we don't sell single rolls of Portrait 400, and they said, well, I saw it on Amazon. I said, well, we don't sell film to Amazon, so it's really hard. It's really hard because we don't determine exit prices. So most of the time, everybody is like looking at each other saying, well, I don't want to be too high. I want to be just right. So, I think for the most part, the dealers that I'm dealing with are trying to be fair. Because we don't say, what margins are. So.
I'll throw one more plug out there for Downtown Camera before we wrap up.
Yeah.
If you are in Canada and you buy film and you're upset about some of the prices, start buying film from Downtown Camera and sign up for the AM/FM program. It's a great program that they have. It's a yearly thing. I think it's like $20 or $25, but you get a 20% discount on Kodak products and 10 or 15% discount on the rest of them. So, and they give you a free roll of Kodak film. So
their membership program is that what you're talking about? The
AM/FM program.
AM. Oh, okay. I I know they had talked about it, but yeah, but you know, Claudia and Harry are, you know, some of my favorite people, no doubt about it. I'm with you on on that, Merlin. Yeah,
Definitely.
they're just wonderful. You know, before I let you go, I know that I told you I was like a gymnast in college, and that's why I kind of chased after,
right.
you know, the gymnast. So I want to just prove to the fact that I really was a gymnast, and that's me in probably 1975.
Yeah, I like it, even with the glasses going on.
Yeah. So anyway,
That's right.
many pounds ago. Anyway.
Oh, and I forgot to point out my Kodak mirror.
Oh,
I've got this old Kodak portrait mirror from way back in the day, where it's like Kodak puts life into pictures professionally.
nice.
It's kind of funny. But thank you so much, Tim, for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It was great chatting with you. And next week, I'm going to have Lucy Lumen from Australia, I believe, chatting with me. It's going to be a bit of a later one just because of time zones.
Right.
So I'm going to be talking with her at 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern. So if you can't get on the live, I'll definitely have the recordings up afterwards.
All right.
But,
all right.
And thank you, Tim. It was so great. And I look forward to meeting you in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Look forward to it. Take care. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye now.